Hi, here we are looking at part 2 now. We're going to look at theories. Now there's many perspectives at looking at different psychological disorders, and as a reminder, treat it a bit like wearing different colored sunglasses. And so when we look at these different theories, we're going to look at biological, psychological, social, looking at the role of the environment, and it involves in the development of mood disorders. So remember, there isn't an absolute right way to explain disorders, including mood disorders and depression and bipolar, for example. So bear in mind that oftentimes these theories look at the same issue with a different set of lenses and come up with a different explanation based on their area of expertise and specialty. And when we move to treatment, we'll find that a lot of the times we're amalgamating 2 or even 3 different theory bases to develop a treatment. There isn't a one-size-fits-all. All right, so good luck with this one too. Okay, now we're going to look at the theoretical perspectives of stress and mood disorders. And research indicates that there's a robust and causal association. Now, when I say causal, there's a cause and effect association between stressful life events and major depressive episodes. Major depression is often preceded by stressful events, although not everyone who experiences such events will become depressed. In combination with coping styles and social supports, these resources for handling stress can often make a difference between somebody who does experience depressive state and one who does not. Now, stressors such as loss of a loved one, prolonged unemployment, physical illness, marital or relationship problems, economic hardships, pressures at work, racism, discrimination, these all may contribute to the development and reoccurrence of mood disorders, especially major depression. So if we go to looking at the psychodynamic perspective, this perspective, the more classic psychodynamic theory, depression is viewed in terms of inward directed anger. Most will process through mourning rather normally. However, so, and in this case, in terms of rather normally, is separating themselves from the loss and then sort of seeing the loss out in front of them and sort of allowing themselves to move away from that loss over time. Other people who hold strongly ambivalent feelings towards people they have lost or whose loss is threatened may direct unresolved anger inward towards themselves, and these representations of these people they have incorporated or introjected into themselves, producing self-loathing and depression. Now, bipolar, on the other hand, from a psychodynamic perspective, is understood with a psychodynamic theory in terms of shifting the balance between the ego and the superego. More recently, psychodynamic models, such as the self-focusing model, this incorporates both the psychodynamic and cognitive aspects in explaining depression in terms of the continued pursuit of lost love objects or goals that would be more adaptive to surrender. That is to say, so rather than hanging on to things that are best left to pass on, you've lost somebody due to an illness, rather than harboring and holding on to that person indefinitely, which would produce this depressed state, the more healthy response would be to create that sort of separation and be able to move past, not forgetting the person, but being able to separate yourself from that person. Now, if we look at a more of a learning perspective, well, these perspectives focus on situational factors in explaining depression, such as changes in the level of reinforcement that we would get. When reinforcement is reduced, the person may feel unmotivated and depressed, which can lead to inactivity and further reduction of opportunities for reinforcement. So if we look in terms of some reinforcement and depression, it can include the positive social relationships, access to friends and family that we have, the valued activities and changing in circumstances, a loss of job or divorce. Cohen's interactional theory focuses on the negative family interactions that could lead family members of depressed people to become less reinforcing to them, based on the reciprocal reinforcement, experience of give and take in a relationship, that sort of social support and reassurance. A person with depression may receive the family the support initially. However, as they move forward, they're often not reciprocating, and as that continues, the reinforcement from others starts to decrease. And this can affect the person with depression by them feeling more depressed. Now, if we continue on with a theory and looking at cognitive perspective, Beck's cognitive theory focuses on the role of negative or distorted thinking in depression. And remember, when we talked about distorted thinking, there are those examples on page 158 through to 59. Depression-prone people hold negative beliefs toward themselves, the environment, and the future. This cognitive triad of depression leads to specific errors of thinking or cognitive distortions in response to negative events that can lead to depression, and developing what is known as automatic thoughts. You know, that responses to stress becomes automatic towards seeing them in an unhealthy way. Continuing on with cognitive perspective, there is what's known as the learned helplessness model put out by Hans Seligman. And it's based on the belief that people may become depressed when they come to view themselves as helpless to control the reinforcements in the environment or to change their lives for the better. The reformulated version of this theory is held that the ways in which people explain events or their attributions determine their the proneness towards depression in the face of negative events. The combination of internal, global, stable attributions for negative events renders one of the most vulnerable to depression. So when you're looking at the attribution scale there, global just means it affects everything, whereas specific, it affects single or individual kind of circumstances. Stable means they seem to happen consistently across time, whereas unstable doesn't seem that they have a particular point in time where they happen at any particular. And then internal, it's just things that happen from within. External are those things that happen from outside the person. You can find a list on page 161 in arbitration. We can also consider the biological perspective, and genetics appears to play a particularly important role in mood disorders, especially in explaining major depressive disorder and bipolar disorder. Imbalances in the neurotransmitter activity in the brain appears to be involved in depression and mania. Twin and adoptive studies have added strength to this theory and also looked at the hereditary factor. Now, the Diathis model looks at the use of the explanatory framework to illustrate how biological and psychological Diathis may interact with stress in the development of depression. Now, if you go back and see what the Diathis model is, you'll see that there's, genetic or biological vulnerabilities built into some people over others. That the life stressors that are piled on top, well, that person that has more proneness, more vulnerabilities built in, they will get the equal amount of life experience and show, say in this case, depression, where somebody else who doesn't have that proneness will have the same level of life experiences but won't develop depression. And so if we're going to try to sort of put some perspective around this, this is the Diathis model. So the psychological vulnerability plus biological vulnerability added to the potential stressors, things like unemployment, divorce, any other socio-cultural factors. Now, whether or not you bring into the situation more of these coping resources and social supports could lead to whether or not you will establish or form for yourself a state of depression. Okay, now this is again an overview. Please make sure you take time to review your textbook and read the yellow boxes for additional information. You will find it very helpful to help understand some of these perspectives. Okay, good luck, and then we'll see you in part 3. Bye now.